Hello, this is a YouTube video I've been wanting to make for quite a long time now, and it seems obvious, but what really did cause World War One? A lot of you will be thinking, of course, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. However, that was only kind of the final nail in the coffin. So let's actually expand on that and talk about what really caused the First World War. Number one, nationalism. Nationalism had been both a unifying factor for countries such as Italy and Germany throughout the 19th century, but also dividing factors for countries such as Russia and Austro-Hungary during the 19th century. Nationalism is simply the belief that all people, or a group of people, should be unified under one culture, one country. Such that in the Germany's case, throughout the 19th century, after the Napoleonic Wars, the coalitions after the Franco-Prussian War, there was of course Großdeutschland, the big Germany, or Kreisdeutschland, which means small Germany. And these of course unified Germany into what it went today. They did actually go for Kreisdeutschland in the end, which was small Germany. And of course for Italy, they did unify in 1871 as well. However, for Austro-Hungary, nationalism was a dividing factor. The Serbs, also Bosnians and Czechs and Slovaks and Poles really wanted independence. Sorry, not so much Serbia, that was, then again there were still some Serbs in the Bosnian part, which of course still causes conflicts today even, doesn't it, with those Yugoslav countries. Of course they were dividing factors. The belief that one people should be met, so of course that did start the ball rolling. Because of course nationalism, if one country attacks you, or one group of people attacks you, want to attack them back. So nationalism definitely was a cause for conflict in World War One. This leads on to number two, which was militarism. Militarism is simply the belief that you need a large-scale army, navy, or not really air force back in the day, but you know what I mean. Large scale, but they did some air force in 1911. Italy did use an air force against the Ottomans in Libya. We'll get onto that one later. Militarism, of course, like I said, just the belief that you need a large army, militaristic capabilities to defend yourself, which of course goes on from nationalism. This was definitely, again, another spark that led to World War One, because all these countries started having massive, vast opposing armies. Of course, like today we have like nuclear bombs as deterrents. Back then it was large armies as deterrents. You had Russia, that's a large army of almost 5 million men, but only 28% of them had guns. In fact, when the German soldiers first met the Russians at the First Battle of Tannenberg, they reported they were using pitchforks and garden tools against them, because of course they were under-equipped. That was Russia's case, but they did have a large army that was disciplined. France had a relatively large army, around 1 million soldiers, and it was equipped, but it was outdated. No khaki, still in blue uniform. Germany and Austro-Hungary did have their large armies. Germany 800,000, Austro-Hungary 1,400,000. But they weren't well disciplined, particularly for Austro-Hungary's case. And of course, language was also a problem. The British had by far the most elite and professional army in the entire world. However, in Britain itself, only 140,000 soldiers. The other 5,500,000 were throughout the empire, which of course, back then, if you want to get a soldier from New Zealand or Fiji all the way to Europe, it's going to take some time to mobilise. Which is why, of course, militarism did lead to World War One, because not only at the time was it, of course, pre-1914, they want to have armies to compete each other. When the First World War did start becoming a much more global war, of course, that was the reason why it took time for the soldiers to get over there. And by that case, colonial fighting had already been started, so the armies were starting to meet each other in colonies. Now, in my opinion, this leads on to the third and final, definitely the key factor for the cause of World War One, and that is imperialism. The belief that you need to grow an empire to maintain your discipline. And this kind of leads me on to my conclusion. The real cause for the First World War was probably the British Empire. Not alone, the British Empire definitely was not exactly, it wasn't exactly shoving bayonets in like Austrians or Germans' throats, quite literally, before 1914, but they were having that very, very large empire. The British Empire was of course huge, wasn't it? Absolutely huge. That's a quarter of the entire world under British influence. And of course, for example, in Somalia, Austro-Hungary wanted territories. In East Africa, the Germans wanted territories. And in France, the French even though they were an ally, the British had the Sudan, which the French wanted. So all this land the British held that other countries wanted, this caused conflicts. However, the British used this to their own advantage, and they were simply, well, do you want us or Germany? Or do you want us or the Austro-Hungarians? Because of course, the British definitely did abolish, of course, slavery, etc. And by then they were definitely moving towards a more civilised empire, although atrocities were still committed by people such as Cecil Rhodes in modern day Zambia. However, even it wasn't just the British imperialism as well. Germany was also a massive unifying factor. Kaiser Wilhelm II wanted Weltpolitik, which is, of course, world politics. Kaiser Wilhelm II wanted a complete dominating empire of Germany that would rule the world. He even had plans to attack the US and Cuba before 1914 because he wanted that global empire. However, of course, he had problems doing that because the British were having most of the territory he wanted. So that was definitely, I think, imperialism was probably the main cause of World War I. Everyone wanted to beat each other up for territory, and in the end, well, that's what they got. They got beating each other up. Territory was exchanged, and of course, 17 million people would die as a result of the First World War. So yes, everyone, thank you all so much for watching this YouTube video. However, at the end of the day, although I did say the British Empire, it's quite hard to say who really did cause World War I in terms of an individual. There's just these factors: nationalism, imperialism, and militarism. But I hope that does make it a bit more clear about what really caused World War I, besides just the assassination of Franz Ferdinand. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in my next YouTube video. Goodbye.